the elevator dropped another victim. This time it was a teenager named Thomas. He fell to the ground, squinting against the bright light, and found himself in a strange square space. The harsh walls of the labyrinth towered around him, blocking his path to freedom. Thomas was not alone. Besides him, there were 60 other teenagers who did not know how they had gotten here. Many of them couldn't even remember their real names. Life on the Glade was like a perverted version of primitive society, pure survival, primitive economics, and rigid rules. Once a month the elevator brought them a new supply of food and another lost teenager. It had gone on like this for 3 years now. As the sun set, its walls moved as if alive, changing direction, and behind them lurked nightmares, grievers. These vile creatures would attack them if they didn't make it back in time. Their bites were slowly turning people into crazed, aggressive beasts. But they had no intention of living here for the rest of their lives. So they formed a troop of fast men. Every day, barely the sun would rise, these desperate guys would rush into the maze, trying to find a way out. At night, Thomas dreamed scraps of memories. He didn't know what it meant, but his gut told him that change was coming. A few days after arriving, Thomas faced a nightmare for real. Ben, one of the runners, attacked him right in broad daylight. The madness that gripped his mind turned him into a beast. Thomas barely managed to dodge the first blow, instinctively recoiling, but Ben was too fast. But Thomas broke free and ran to the others, begging for help. It turned out he had been stung by a monster. He was pushed out of the gate, begging and sobbing, before the walls closed. By dawn, there was no trace of him left. The next day, Albie, the leader of the gliders, traveled with Minnow, the best runner, to the labyrinth. But they were attacked by a monster. Albie fell first, the poison injected into his body stiffened his movements and his consciousness faded. Minnow tried to drag him, but the maze had already begun to close. Thomas did not delay. Forgetting his inhibitions, forgetting his fear, he threw himself into the maze, into the heart of the danger. Minnow screamed, begging him not to interfere, but Thomas could no longer hear. To save his friends, Thomas began to distract them. The monster glided into the darkness, deadly and relentless. Against the monster, they had no weapons. And Thomas went for a trick. He tricked the monster, lured it between the walls, which at that moment moved. And the monster didn't have time to slip out. There was the sound of crumpling metal, an eerie screech, and then Griever was dead. When the 3 survivors returned in the morning, everyone froze. No one had yet survived a night in the maze. But the real shock awaited them later. The elevator buzzed again, going upwards. Everyone expected to see food, another newcomer. But instead, only a girl lay at the bottom of the platform. Pale, barely breathing. She opened her eyes for a second, muttered Thomas's name, and slipped back into unconsciousness. In her clenched hand, the gliders found a note that said she was the last one. They didn't know what it meant. In the morning, Thomas, Minnow, and the 3 runners headed back to the maze. They needed to examine the dead Griever. In his disheveled carcass, they found something strange, a metal object that looked like a machine part. The word threshold was engraved on it in black letters. A chill ran down Thomas's spine, for he had always heard the word threshold in his dreams. After the attack on Albie, Newt had temporarily taken command. It was he who, despite the arguments and doubts, had appointed Thomas as the new runner. This decision clearly displeased Gully. His hostility toward Thomas was off the charts, and he never missed an opportunity to stir up discontent among the other gliders. At the runner's hut, Minnow showed Thomas a model of the maze. According to him, there was no way out in the maze. Meanwhile, the mysterious girl woke up. She was scared to death and wouldn't let anyone near her. Only Thomas, to her surprise, trusted her. He climbed a high tower to talk to her. He saw her in a dream and called her Teresa. The girl shuddered. It turned out she had seen him in a dream too. In her hand were 2 vials of clear liquid. There was no time to think. Albie was losing his mind, his eyes darting about, his words jumbled into incoherent fragments of phrases. He was turning into Ben. At his own risk, Thomas decided to inject him with the vaccine. He continued to shake for a few seconds, then he calmed down. But then Albie's eyes cleared and his breathing evened out. In the morning, Thomas and Minnow went to explore the maze again. But suddenly the sensor they had taken with them began to emit strange sounds, short pulses, as if indicating a direction. Following the signal, they walked further and further. A secret exit opened up in front of them. For the first time in 3 years, they were close to solving the mystery. The laser beam scanning them caused an alarming reaction. The walls approached with terrifying speed, the air was filled with the hum of moving structures, and only by a miracle did the runners manage to slip back out into the glade. Exhausted but full of energy, they told the others about their discovery. Hope sparkled in the gliderist's eyes, but the joy quickly faded, too much remained unclear. At night, a new challenge awaited them. The labyrinth did not close. Moreover, 3 more doors opened. And out of them, rumbling and wriggling, crawled the Grivers. Dark, armored creatures with metal limbs swept through the camp, ripping souls from bodies. Those who tried to hide were found. Those who tried to flee fell under the blows of the deadly stingers. No one was prepared for such a turn of events, and Albie died in the chaos. But they managed to kill one Griever, retrieving his stinger and the marking device. Thomas realized, he had to remember everything. He thrust the poisonous sting into himself. Memories came flooding back, he saw himself on the other side of the labyrinth. He was connected to those who had sent them here. And Teresa had been involved, too. He told his friends everything he'd seen. His openness was not appreciated, and now everyone was suspicious of him. This strengthened Gully's position. Those who had long considered Thomas an outsider were now using the moment to turn the Gladers against him. Like a poisonous fog, doubt crept into the hearts of the teenagers. Thomas saw their attitudes toward him change. Gully offers to sacrifice them both. But he does not have time to put his monstrous plan into action. Thomas's friends come to his aid and in the turmoil snatch him from the clutches of the self-appointed dictator. Now they have until tonight to find a way out. The Grievers are not slumbering, attacking them from all sides. During these battles, Thomas remembers the code and they stumble upon a research center. Cold lamps shiver, illuminating the dead bodies of scientists. A videotape flashes on the screen. Ava Page, stern, collected, explains what has happened to the Earth. The sun has burned the Earth. As a result, a dangerous virus appeared on Earth that made humans very aggressive. To find a vaccine for this virus, an experiment was done. They chose teenagers and put them in an aggressive environment. According to her, the experiment was cruel but necessary. And then there was an explosion. The doors rattled open and armed men rushed in. At the same moment, Ava Page puts a gun to her temple and pulls the trigger. They try to move on, but are stopped by Gully. He has been bitten by the monsters. He points the gun at Thomas, and Minnow doesn't hesitate to throw the spear. But he manages to get a shot off, and Thomas is protected by Chuck with his body. As he mourns his friend's death, the military show up and take him away. And they are helicoptered in to see the labyrinth they were trying to escape from, in its entirety. In a secret room, behind heavy curtains, the alive and unharmed Ava Page looks at those gathered around the round table with an enigmatic smile. Phase 1 is complete. The experiment has been a success. It's time to begin Phase 2. Meanwhile, the survivors fly towards a new horror, not even realizing that the maze was only a prologue to their most terrifying battle. If you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe and give the channel a like. See you soon.